It's you liberals who have lifted them up, Howard.
Paul, you conservatives make a mistake. You can't afford to strangle hope in people. Without hope, people become dangerous.
No, Howard, you liberals have let them invade our society. You give them jobs, political jobs.
Paul, you missed the point. It's only the smart ones we move up.
That makes it even worse.
No, we have to move them up. If we leave a smart one in the ghetto, he might develop into a leader against us. But if we raise him up into white society, we neutralize him. He feels compelled to try to act like us. He loses his identity and his racial anger, if he has any. He becomes alien to his brothers. They realize he sold them out and they grow to hate him. He becomes worthless to them and safe for us. No, thank you. In fact, in his love for the creature comforts, except for his color, he's become one of us.
Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green with another 2019 video presentation, and today I'm going to talk about the fallacy between the red and the blue, or Republican and Democrat paradigm. And especially as an African American, we get caught up in this, and even so, as a Christian, as a man of God, I think that what we've done is we've kind of taken the bait and swallowed the blue pill, if you will, and we have grabbed a hold of this false narrative of red and blue, or Democrat or Republican. If you watch my last video, and I would encourage you to look at the 2019 movement videos that we've already produced. I talked about last time is what's called the Hegelian dialectic, and what the Hegelian dialectic is, you have a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis, and that is a way of manipulation and control and social engineering, where the powers that be control both sides of the narrative, and they use those both sides of the narrative in order to push you into a certain direction. And we know from the global elite, or some people call them the Illuminati, or the secret societies, if you will, that those who control the half a percenters of the world. Some people call them the 1%ers. I call them the half a percenters, because it might be 1% of the world's population. I think is probably closer to a 0.5% of the world's population that are the globalists, the global elite, the bankers, the people that control things behind the scenes. I think that they are the ones that we're talking about when I say the global elite, or people call them the Illuminati. So that's a whole nother talk. You can look at some of my other videos and I talk about who they are. So anyway, when you understand the dynamic that they're pushing for a one world government, they're pushing for one world economic system, and ultimately it will lead also to a one world religion. So when you understand what their goal is, so the thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, the synthesis, which is the solution that they're offering, is this one world government that's supposed to solve all of our problems. The Bible says when they yell peace and safety, sudden destruction is upon them. If you look at things like the Patriot Act, during the time of the Patriot Act, there was this global war on terror had started because we had 9/11, we had the bombing of the World Trade Center, and immediately they offered a solution to try to protect you by giving you the Patriot Act. Now, I'm not going to get into the conspiracy theories or all the things behind 9/11 and whether or not it was an inside job or not, but just think about this. I just want you to have an open mind when you hear what we're talking about here. Think about the fact that the Patriot Act is a huge document. It was completed in 3 weeks. And usually documents like that, that are that detailed and that are that, has to, it's a law that's being passed. So, and you know how lawyers are, it has to go through all kind of legal stipulations in order for these documents to be completed, but yet it was completed in only a couple of weeks after the incident. So it would beg the question, was it already being written ahead of time? And if so, how could someone know that something tragic like 9/11 was going to happen? And if they did know, why wouldn't they have done something about it? So anyway, that's a whole nother talk. But anyway, these are the type of things that when we talk about the Hegelian dialectic, when we talk about both sides of the argument, that the globalists use in order to push the public in a certain place. So we all willingly gave up our rights. And I remember getting on an airplane October the 11th, 2001, which was a month after the 9/11 happened. And I remember everybody willingly taking off their shoes. People were getting strip shirts. Nobody gave any complaints because they were willingly giving up their rights for the ideal of being made safe. So the book of Thessalonians talk about that. It says when the people yell peace and safety, it means that they are relying on the government in order to solve their problems or to keep them safe. It says sudden destruction comes upon them. So it's important for us to understand exactly what it is that's happening when we give up our rights in order for you know, the powers that be to protect us or to provide for us. Then usually we're going to get in trouble. You know, there was an old saying that talked about he who will give up his liberty, a person who gives up their liberty really don't deserve to be free. So, and I paraphrase that, of course. But anyway, when we're looking at the 2019 movement, we've been talking about the pattern, right? So the Bible is a book that gives us the patterns of humanity. Humanity operates in patterns. It operates in cycles, and it's a repetitive cycle. So when you see the cycle, you also should understand the direction that things are going into. So in the Bible, there's a pattern of destruction and there's a pattern of prosperity and advancement. So when we violate God's laws or his commandments, we actually fall into the pattern of destruction. And so that pattern of destruction is the pattern that humanity goes through over and over again. So when we think about the breakdown of the family, every time we violate God's laws and we turn away from the morals and values that the foundation of the Bible is built on, mankind is headed for destruction. So anyway, if you look at the pattern, you know, the 400-year pattern, you have, first of all, the pattern of Moses, and when God delivered Israel out of bondage, he said to Abraham, your descendants will be in bondage for 400 years and then I'm going to deliver them. The second 400-year period was the 400-year period from the Old to the New Testament. It was a time that God said he was going to send a deliverer through Jesus. And a similar thing happened, right? There was attack on the families, attack on the males and the babies. There was economic oppression and those type of things, right? So that's the pattern that we see. The 2019 movement addresses that because in 1619, we had the start of the transatlantic slave trade. 2019 represents the 400-year anniversary of that. So we see breakdown of the family, we see economic oppression in the African American community, attack on the males, attack on the babies, etc., etc. That's one of the patterns that we see. So let's look at something, and one of the strategies that the enemy always uses in order to oppress a people. Okay, so in Exodus chapter 1, this is in verse 9, this is referring to Israel being delivered from Egypt. This is referring to Moses, the birth of Moses. So in Exodus chapter 1, verse 9, this is Pharaoh talking. And he said to his people, look at the people of the children of Israel. They're more mightier than we. Come and let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And it happen in the event of war, they also join our enemies and fight against us. And so go up to the land. Therefore set the taskmasters over them to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh supply cities, Python and Ramses. Verse 12 says, but the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were in dread of the children of Israel. So one of the things that they used was they used fear. You see in America sometimes in the 13th Amendment and even right after slavery, what they use is this picture, if you will, of the angry black man or the criminal. The black criminal is going to come and they're going to affect your babies and your break into your houses and steal all your stuff. And if you ever get a chance, there's a movie called The Birth of a Nation. D.W. Griffith wrote it. It's considered an American classic, but for a black person, it's not a classic at all. It's about the formation of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, one side note is the award for, it was one of the first moving pictures in Hollywood. It was the early part of the 20th century it came out, and I had the chance to see that. I had a film class and they showed it to us. So anyway, in the movie The Birth of a Nation, it showed about the formation of the Ku Klux Klan. And what it said basically is right after the Reconstruction, after the Civil War was over, blacks in the South were very prosperous. They were in political power. They were really prospering as a community. And so what it showed is there was some corrupt black politicians who were in charge of some of these southern cities like mayors or whatever. And so a couple of them were trying to date white women. They were trying to, you know, date white women. In the one scene, they show this black Confederate soldier, and he fell in love with this white lady, and he asked her for a kiss. And so what she did was she threw herself over the cliff instead of giving him a kiss, because what they were doing is they were really pushing this racism thing. They were really pushing like the barbarism of the black man to the place where this lady rather die than to allow this black man to kiss her.
Or an interracial relationship is portrayed as a despicable, almost criminal offense in the film. Miscegenation is dramatically portrayed when the film depicts the legalization of interrace marriages. Gus, a former slave, proposes to marry Flora, the youngest Cameron daughter. In this segment, Griffith infers that it is better to die than to succumb to a relationship with an African American.
And so what happened was, because of that, the Ku Klux Klan was formed, and the Ku Klux Klan was formed basically to protect white women from these horrible black men. So they used fear in order to push this agenda. And so we see here in Exodus chapter 1 that Pharaoh's doing the same thing. He's talking about Israel is going to grow so great and so big, and they're a threat to our society. So he began to oppress them through slavery and burdening them, economic oppression, because he was making them do a whole lot of extra work, but they didn't get any rewards for it. And verse 14, they made their lives bitter with hard bondage. It says, in mortar and brick and in all manner of service. Verse 15 says, and the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, of whom the name of one was Shiphrah and the other name was Puah. And he said, when you do the duties of the midwife for the Hebrew women and see them on their birth stools, if it's a son, then you shall kill him, but if it's a daughter, then he shall live. Now again, this is attack on the babies, and more specifically attack on the males of the Hebrew community. So he was throwing off the balance of the family. He was trying to kill the males, and he was destroying babies. And here's the second time we see this in Matthew chapter 2. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, he determined from them what the time the star appeared, and he said to he sent them to Bethlehem, and he said, go search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. So this is the birth of Jesus. These are the wise men that came from the east, and they were looking for Jesus because they knew he was the Son of God and the Messiah. Herod pretends as though he's a friend of Jesus, and he asked him, hey, you know, why don't you go, and when you find him, let me know where he's at so I can go worship him. But we know his intention was to go and destroy the Messiah, because he was afraid that Jesus was coming and was going to overthrow his authority. When we look in Exodus chapter 1, Pharaoh tried to use the Hebrew midwives. So what Pharaoh did was he got people out of the community, and he offered them money, power, status, those type of things, in order to help him to push his agenda of destroying the community.
Commitment. And more than that, I would say that just because a person is a Negro or a black American does not mean that he's going to struggle for Negro rights or for jobs for Negroes or anything else. I think that today you could point to a large number of Negro leaders who have consistently betrayed Negroes in a whole host of areas.
They aren't really Negro leaders. These are puppets that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. These are parrots that have been put in front of the Negro community by white liberals. You can't name me a Negro leader who has been betrayed Negroes, who has not been endorsed, sanctioned, subsidized, and supported by the white liberals.
So what Pharaoh did was he got people out of the community, and he offered them money, power, status, those type of things, in order to help him to push his agenda of destroying the community. Now that's going to be important. I want you to hear what I just said, and we're going to see this pattern. I'm going to show you this pattern that's still relevant today and has happened over the last several years. So Pharaoh, he got the Hebrew midwives, and he says, when the Hebrew women have a baby, if it's a male, I want you to kill them. I want you to help me to push my agenda of destroying this particular community. And what Pharaoh was doing was he was offering them riches and fame and power and status. And Herod does the same thing with the three wise men. He tells them, if you come back here and you tell me where Jesus is, you know, I'll make it worth your while, basically. So we see this pattern over and over again. And so I'm going to talk about how that happens in our community. And this is not going to be an easy topic. Some of you may or may not really like to hear what I'm about to say, but honesty is important. And when we see the pattern and we understand how we've been victimized by these strategies of the enemy, it's important for us to stand on them and not continue to be victimized. It's one thing when you don't know, but once you are made aware of something, once you are enlightened on things that are going on, then it's important for you to operate on that, because our babies are dying, our community's dying because of the fact that we have been taken advantage of by the same strategy that has repeated itself over time. Right? So there's something I want to talk to you called the boule, and some of you may or may not have heard of it, the black boule. The boule, it comes from a Greek word. It literally means one who reports to the black boule. He came across this. The black boule is the oldest black fraternal organization, and the black boule was literally created to emulate Skull and Bones. If some of you have heard of Skull and Bones, it's the secret society that is on Yale's campus. You know, President George H.W. Bush was one, and his family, well, Prescott Bush, I think, which was George W. Bush's grandfather, was one of the founding members of Skull and Bones. George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, John Kerry, and some other notable people were members of Skull and Bones. Now, Skull and Bones was also instrumental in creating the CIA. And I'll get into that at a different time. But the CIA is very important in the globalist agenda, because not only do they help to flood drugs in certain communities in order to keep them destroyed, but they do a lot of covert things around the world. So the CIA is something that is it's a very interesting organization, to say the least. Skull and Bones was instrumental in helping to form the CIA. So this organization called the Black Boule actually is an organization that was started in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1904, making it the oldest black fraternity, and it was created to emulate Skull and Bones, because if you know anything about Skull and Bones and some of these secret organizations, they wouldn't allow black people in it. So unfortunately, instead of the black people just being okay with that because it wasn't a great organization, they wanted to emulate them, and so they came up with their own called the Black Boule. And Stephen Coakley writes, anywhere there are prominent professional blacks, the takeaway folks, is that the black society is modeled on a white, mostly political, business, and cultural leaders are chosen on the basis of their membership in a satanic secret society. We all have been betrayed in the most egregious fashion. That's what Stephen Coakley writes. And here's some of the quotes from Stephen Coakley. It says, the number of secret society members with their satanic false idols teaching all aspects of the daily lives of black folks, including children, is mind-blowing. It is estimated that 70 to 75% of all black male lawyers are members of the secret society, Sigma Pi Phi. That's the name of the boule. It's actually called Sigma Pi Phi. Virtually every black mayor, congressman, banker, or millionaire in America are members of the secret society, the boule. Now, Stephen Coakley was lived from 1952 and he died in 1912. And he does lectures. You can go on YouTube and look at some of his lectures. He also wrote a book. And here's what he asserts. This is what Stephen Coakley asserts. It says, genuine leaders like MLK and Malcolm X were part of the boule, but once they stopped following after the narrative that they were supposed to, then they were killed. They were assassinated. There's some more people that you may have heard of that's part of the boule, and So we talked about Martin Luther King was reported a Boule member. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Bill Cosby, and some of the other people were members of the Boule. And so what happens is a lot of people, this is the speculation, this is alleged. I'm not saying for sure that this is what's happening, but a lot of these, there's a lot of information that say that they might be true. So Bill Cosby, who was a member of the Boule, which is you get fame and fortune and money and status, went against what they told him to do. And so if you stop playing ball, if you stop doing what they tell you to do, then you face either getting killed or you face what Bill Cosby is going through. Now, the reason I say that with Bill Cosby is because Bill Cosby, most of us loved him. We loved the Bill Cosby show. We loved the Cosby Show, loved the stuff he did. But it's based on what's coming out now is for 50 years, probably, Bill Cosby has been doing the same thing. He has all these illicit affairs with young ladies. Many of the women are saying it wasn't consensual, that he drugged them, but people knew about it. It's already been around, so why is it now it's coming out? And the speculation is that Bill Cosby, if you may or may not have heard, he was attempting to buy CBS, and the powers that be, he was going against their wishes by doing that, and so because of that they tried to destroy him. So anyway, that's conspiracy, may or may not be true, but it is peculiar as to how you do this for 50 years and 30 or 40 women or however many came out, but all of a sudden now it's coming out, even though some of them even said that they tried to tell people before. So the Boule, let me talk a little bit about it, and then I'll move on, but I want you to understand what happens. So what Pharaoh did in Egypt is he went and got people from that community to try to help him push his agenda. That's what Herod did. During the time of slavery, the slave masters would have what was called house Negroes and field Negroes. The house Negro would be the black person that was part of the slave community, but they would be able to live inside of the master's house, and they had certain rights. They were able to live better than the rest of the slaves, but they were still slaves, but their job was to help to suppress the others that were on the plantation. And so that's the idea of, that is what Stephen Coakley and some of the people that talk about the Boule asserts, that is the you know, high society, people that are rich and famous. And I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to give you some information about it, and I want you to look it up for yourself if you get a chance. So the Boule recruits top blacks in American society into its ranks, and today 5,000 plus, they call them archons, which are male Boule members. Their wives are called arcusis. There's 112 chapters, and they make up the wealthiest group of black men and women on the planet. Now again, this is Stephen Coakley that is talking about them. He came across this secret society by accident, and he gives this information. He died in 2012, so this information probably is, you know, if you figure at least 2012, you know, it may or may not be as accurate, some of the numbers that were given here. The funny thing about it is the word archon means demon, and it's the kind that likes to keep hidden. The Boule, they serve the global elite. And it says here, as long as the black members conform to the rules, the riches will be in abundance. If not, down comes the hatchet. And blackmail is part of the deal. Now, Marcus Garvey, if some of you may have heard of Marcus Garvey earlier in the 20th century, he had this Back to Africa movement. So he was about black empowerment. He wanted segregation. He didn't want black people to be desegregated into white society. He felt like black people should get together, get their wealth and resources, and go back to Africa. So W.E.B. Du Bois is he was a founding member of the New York City chapter of the Boule, and this is what W.E.B. Du Bois stated. He says, the Boule was created to keep the black professionals away from people like Marcus Garvey. The remaking of the house Negro was necessary to institute a group of blacks who had a vested interest in protecting the elite white system. It was about selling out brothers and sisters for power and money. The majority of black lawyers, doctors, engineers, and accountants were members of this secret society. So this is what they're saying about the Boule. Like I said, that The actual understanding of what the boule was a reporter to the king. So in the Greek society and even in England, they had boule, and the boule was supposed to be out in the community and get information and take it back to the king or the ruling authority of the time. In the Greek system, the boule was the lower house of the parliament, which charged organizing the affairs of the city for the king on behalf of the king. This is an ancient story, and you know, we talk about the New World Order, the Illuminati, the global elite. They take blacks in the boule and they use them to control the population. So many of the leaders that we consider to be black leaders, like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton and those type of people, are actually part of the boule, and they're used by the powers that be to control the masses of black society. So they basically push the agenda that they are given by these secret societies. We talked about W.E.B. Du Bois, and what he said was Marcus Garvey was trying to empower black people and get them to have their own stuff and build up their own communities. And so the boule was basically created for people like that, to keep them from building up the power structure of the black people and keep black people under the authority of the system of government that was meant to oppress them. So in the boule was first started, then you have the other black Greek letter organizations. So you have Alpha Kappa Psi, Omega Psi Phi, Phi Beta Sigma, AKAs, Deltas, Zetas, and Sigma Gamma Rhos. Now, what I want to say, just like these Masonic organizations, and I have friends and family who are in these organizations, so I'm not knocking the organizations, those people that are at the bottom rung. But what you have to understand is the powers that be, the global elite, use these organizations as a recruiting place in order to get the best and the brightest, and to offer them power and money in order to help control the masses of black people. So just like Masonry, my grandfather was one, and the lower levels of Masonry, they don't they don't know all the information. It's when you get to the upper echelons of the ruling elite and the real power and the real wealth is when you begin to find out more of the secrets, and then they will hold things against you in order for you not to spill the beans, as it's called. So you have to understand things like the NAACP. The NAACP was actually not created by black people. It was created as a system. You know, it's created by actually the NAACP and the Urban League were created by Jews. And they use W.E.B. Du Bois and those other people as the people. They use them to promote their agenda. So anyway, there was an article in 1999, in March of 7th, 1999. Because see, some of this stuff I'm saying to you may be new to you, and you may say, man, you know, I don't know about all this. It doesn't make sense. But it is well documented, and you can find out yourself. But it's the same strategy that the enemy has always used to keep a society or community, a certain culture or community oppressed, which in this particular instance, we're talking about African Americans. So this is an article in the New York Times by Monty Williams, March 7th, 1999. And it says, "Is there a black upper class? Dr. Chester Redhead opens his garage, walks in his green Rolls Royce, and bursts in his 1,000-watt grin." You know, he's very wealthy. He has a huge house in Scarsdale, New York. He was well connected, and he began to talk a little bit about the his association with the boule. Now this is, like I said, you can look this up for yourself. New York Times, March 7th, 1999, and here's some of the information. There's a book called "Is There a Black Upper Class?" And it's written by Lawrence Otis Graham, and you can get a copy of it. It's called "Is This the Black Upper Class?" and it was on the New York Times list as well. So it says Graham, he was a graduate of, this is the gentleman who wrote the book, and he was a graduate of Princeton University and Harvard Law School, and he authored 12 books. And he talks about this upper class, the boule, or these people that are used by the powers that be in order to help control the. And so I'm not going to go through the whole article, but this is what he says. It says he describes, for example, how he called on his contacts in the boule. This is a person who was thinking about running for office. And it says he called on his contacts in the boule, a national group of 4,000 prominent African-American men last year, when he considered entering politics. If your boule friends will back you, people will know you're real. The book quotes Mr. Graham's uncle as advising him. The author continues, although reluctant, within a half an hour, I was on the phone with some of the most influential men in the country, all of them accomplished in their professions, all of their members of men's groups into which I had been inducted 3 years earlier. The fact that the national organization included virtually every, I want you to hear this part, this is what this gentleman asserts in his book. He's part of the boule. It says, the fact that this national organization included virtually every black mayor, congressman, banker, or millionaire was a reality that I should not have forgotten. One of the prominent boule members, former Mayor David Dinkins of New York City, drew on the network himself. When he first ran for New York City-wide, individual people in the boule backed my candidacy, Mr. Dinkins said. Some wrote checks and others campaigned with me in the streets, but the boule as an organization is not political, so they didn't back me. So anyway, this is what happens. These leaders, now what they do is they use people in politics, they use people in the entertainment industry, and finance and Hollywood. They use them. They allow them to get into their upper ranks. They offer them fame, fortune, and money. But what they have to do is they have to push the agenda of the ruling elite, and they keep the average person suppressed, because they are the ones that push the agenda. It's part of their social engineering. If you look at advertising and marketing, what do they do with a product? If they want to sell a product, they'll get a famous person, whether it's an athlete or an actor or someone like that, and they will endorse the product, and then it gets people to go out and buy it because people trust these celebrities. And so that's what the boule is about. They get these people in music and Hollywood and politics. They get them to push this agenda, and they help to control the masses. So I just mentioned some of the people. Most of the mayors, black mayors, a lot of the congressmen and prominent people are part of this organization, which is why, and the reason I want to get to this, if you notice, most Democrat cities that have a black mayor, most of them, black people are doing very poorly. If you look at cities like Detroit, if you look at, whether it's a black person that's the mayor or whether it's just the liberals that are in charge, usually in these larger cities, most of them, black people are doing very poorly. So if you look at Chicago, Chicago is a liberal Democrat city, which has black leaders there. Chicago, where our former president is from, Jesse Jackson and all these other people have home bases there. Black people are in dire straits in Chicago. They have a high homicide rate, high crime rate. Detroit, predominantly black. Usually a Democrat or a black person is the mayor. Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C. These cities are heavily populated liberal cities. They have black leadership, and all the black leaders support the Democrats and support the liberal agenda. They get money, they get status and power, but the people suffer. The people in these cities are suffering. If you don't believe me, for St. Louis, Ferguson, that's a liberal city. St. Louis, Missouri, similar things happen all over the country. So anyway, that's the boule. That is when they use people from the community in order to promote their agenda.
Brother Marcus. Brother Omar. Brother Omar. I need something grapey or lemony. Yes, it's acting like we just got here together. Many people will see the tape and the videotape, wonder why everybody was so lightly greeting each other. It's because we have been talking for a while. And we have now stepped forward to have a discussion about the black male secret society known as Sigma Pi Phi, acronym the Boule, B-O-U-L-E. We will do our best to show you the information related to the Boule. That's what this lecture is about. I could give the entire lecture and quote every inch of the documentation without looking at it. I know them that well. But this is my responsibility, my night, to show you the information so that you could look at it with me and double affirm the fact that much of our black press, as much as we like it, has not been honest in talking about this group of black men, for they respect it very highly and never speak negatively against it. We also know that we've had many black people who've been a member of it and have never ever broken the code or the creed and spoken to one who was a non-member. Though they pledge and swear that their goal is to represent you, you will have a hard time believing it when they don't even seek to let you know that they who help you are. And so, in July 17th, 1990, July 18th, 1990, the Los Angeles Times did a front page story on the left column about elite fraternity of black men. Excuse me, brother. I saw that one get away. I'm just shaming myself. I stand back here. This elite fraternity of black men were described in the article as being influential, as being somewhat like Skull and Bones at Yale. And as it said these things, I was a little in awe, as the others, brothers in African Minds United and the Coalition Against Black Exploitation, as we all were intrigued by the fact that this group of men could have been in existence and we not know about them. And even other brothers and sisters. I remember talking to a brother who had been National Executive Secretary of Sigma, Phi Beta Sigma, been in fraternity land 37 years, had heard nothing of the Boule ever, though its founder had been a member. And so, as we began to talk about it with other people around the country, we began to realize that people didn't know about it. How you doing, Brother Warren? And not knowing that people didn't know about it, we just assumed that it was incidental, that everybody must know something about it, and that it was not mysterious or connected to all of those other things we had previously been talking about, like Cecil Rhodes and Baron de Rothschild and all the Halls of Haters, the ADL and the Diamond Jewish Connection. We've been talking about the Trilateral Commission, who is responsible for this economic summit that you'll be seeing on TV the next 3-4 days. You need to know that. Anybody? Carl Rowan came on the radio right here in LA. And my friends jumped him, because we jumping them in every city. And when they jumped him, he said the Trilateral Commission ain't done nothing. But the Trilateral Commission went to the president and had him set up the annual economic summit starting in '76, France. So when you listen to how your destiny of your country, they say, rides on that meeting, you wonder how Rowan could make such an allegation, but knowing as a Boule in Washington, D.C. Epsilon chapter, his goal is to never speak of the high, white, and mighty, whom the Boule, all 3,300, are sworn to protect. Yes, these brothers that we are pushing up against the wall have taken a sworn oath that they will never expose the whites that they know actually run the world. They, in ambition and in deference to liberation and respect of the race, have agreed to maintain the status quo of white supremacy, which has two levels of white supremacy: a local, limited, parochial side, the Ku Klux Klan, the Reardons, the Kennehans, the local clans, but has a powerful, more mighty upper crust, which probably would include Occidental Petroleum and Arco and Exxon and Mobil Oil and the Rockefeller Foundation and other influential, wealthy families and institutions. So what we're talking about is, why haven't you heard of those people who are in the secret society? It's because the people who you look to, who you would most suspect would tell you, have sworn that they never will. And because of that, that leaves the sub-leadership, the other group of people that you like a lot, that leaves them to tell you, the heads of the various organizations as you know them. But if you listen to them, they have never said of these black men, for that they did not know. Which means that Malcolm, we know, knew of these men. We know Marcus Garvey knew of these men, because their crowning, most outstanding achievement was the physical elimination and castigation of Marcus Garvey, and the insistence and the climate setting that brought about the death of Malcolm X. For both of those men, international in perspective and insight, were a threat to the very whites that they're sworn to protect. You don't get killed for any other reason than jeopardizing the whites of the whites that run the world. Martin King, who was a boule, met the bullet not for the civil rights thing, but for the international war thing that got 2 Kennedy boys killed also. So we're looking at a group of men who have protected murderers. So what is the crime of this boule? As we allege, as many of them say, why do you step to my doorstep and accuse me of these things, of which I know not? But their so-called limited understanding is in fact defiance, and woven into the oath that they swear that they will never even act like they know who these people really are. We have challenged these people on the radio, TV, in the street, on numerous occasions. Kurt Smoke, the mayor of Baltimore, Jesse Jackson, the head of the Rainbow Coalition, Cecil Murray, all the way down the line. These people that we have challenged have never been able to stand up and honestly turn around and say the truth to the matter. And we understand that. So our job is to come to you with the information so that you can make up your mind.